Hello everybody and welcome back to the greatest show of all time. Today we're going to be talking about a video called The Trans Community is Their Own Worst Enemy. I'm so excited.
The biggest reason why I am censoring the hell out of myself, I really just don't want to invoke the wrath of the trans community.
What is the wrath of the trans community? Would you like to explain that for us?
I don't know why we're pretending that there's not trans people that are out here doxing people for disagreeing with them.
That's not exclusive to the trans community. There's going to be a small subsection of literally any community of doxers and just all around terrible people. That has nothing to do with the trans community at large.
Because that is very much happening, okay? Like, trans people are extremely aggressive.
It must be my testosterone-fueled rage.
Especially the ones with, like, the least skin in the game. Like, the non-binary people.
Do you feel threatened by the non-binary people?
Or people that just claim to be trans but have never experienced dysphoria a day in their life.
So you believe that having gender dysphoria is a prerequisite for being trans? What if it's the case that you transition and no longer have dysphoria? Do you magically become cisgender? What if it's the case that you don't experience dysphoria regardless, but you have a preference for transitioning? Should you just be forced to stay as the gender you were assigned at birth because, well, technically, you're not suffering enough in order to be a true transsexual woman? You have to be miserable in order to be one of us.
They've just taken on this idea, they've taken on this label to be included in.
You do realize medical treatment is expensive, right? Not everybody wants medical treatment, and that's fine. So let me get this straight. If somebody doesn't want to identify as the gender that they were assigned at birth and be arbitrarily categorized that way in society, they necessarily are obligated to take HRT or have medical intervention? Like, that's such a stupid argument. Why should the way that somebody is socially categorized be solely contingent upon whether or not they get medical intervention? What utility does that serve?
Maybe they have their own thing going on, like, yeah, sure, okay, but like...
You mean, for example, not identifying with the gender that they were assigned at birth, which necessarily makes them transgender by definition?
What you are saying that you are is not the same as what this started out as. 10 years ago, the conversation surrounding trans people was not this.
Yeah, and 200 years ago, the conversation surrounding racism was not this. It just means that the Overton window was further to the right. That's not a good thing. That's not the way things ought to be, just because they were that way in the past. It's just a logical fallacy.
Non-binary was not considered trans.
Okay, so because people in our society didn't used to categorize it that way, that makes it invalid? Like, this is such a stupid point. You could literally make the same argument about trans people. Well, you see, nobody in our Western society was ever categorized as transgender or transsexual. Okay? Cool? What is your fucking point?
And that was such like a niche thing to even hear.
It's invalid because I didn't know about it when I was younger and didn't grow up with that knowledge, so it must be fake.
This community has built up into just all of this, I don't even know what.
So if you don't even know what it is, then how are you supposed to criticize it? You're criticizing something that you don't even understand. What's the point? What are you doing?
What is trans?
To be transgender simply means not identifying with the gender you were assigned at birth. It's really fucking simple. I could easily just provide that definition. You can't. You don't have a consistent definition. Oh, it's somebody that has dysphoria? Well, what if they stop having dysphoria after they transition? Oh, well, it's somebody that's experienced dysphoria. Okay, well, what if there's like a detransitioner? Oh, well, it's somebody that medically transitions. Okay, well, what if somebody can't medically transition? Well, it's somebody that medically transitions, if they're given the opportunity to. Okay, well, what if somebody is more dysphoric when it comes to their gender presentation, but not secondary sex characteristics? Then what? Like, where do we draw the line? How do you categorize this?
We can't define it because everyone needs to be included in it.
No, I literally just defined it like a second ago.
It can't be people with dysphoria or just people without dysphoria. It needs to be people that feel like both genders or neither gender.
Or how about everybody that does not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth?
How did we go from, hey, this is a medical condition, there is a subset of people, such a small percentage of people, and something has gone wrong.
People are just more comfortable with coming out now. That's not an issue. Also, if we're talking about the medical condition, gender dysphoria and gender incongruence still exist. They haven't disappeared. Nobody denies the existence of dysphoria, aside from right-wingers.
Has led to there being trans people who experience these feelings of incongruency so fiercely that they are willing to undergo medical treatment and face the ostracization of society.
What if somebody experiences that same incongruence but less fiercely, so they don't experience distress? It's more like a disconnect, or I would be happier if I was categorized as something else. Why do you draw the distinction there? Why do you have to have like this immense level of pain?
To like live as who they truly and authentically are.
Okay, what if it's the case that you're living as who you truly and authentically are without having dysphoria? Like, that's also possible. Some people are like that. Not every trans person experiences dysphoria. They just find that they are happier identifying as something that they weren't assigned at birth. It's just maximizing human happiness. If that's what maximizes their happiness, then what is your argument against it? Is it bad because you don't like it? Or because it's different from you? That's not a very reasonable standard. That's entirely relativistic. Why should that be imposed as a moral standard or even a societal one?
And somehow we've gone from that and there being a very solid understanding that there are men and women and that trans people are not trying to interrupt that in any way.
You're still deviating from the norm, though. Like, you are changing the meaning of words, whether you realize it or not. At one point, gender and sex were defined exactly the same way. In order for trans people to exist, you necessarily have to make that distinction, even as a trans medicalist. If there is no distinction, then your gender identity and pronouns must necessarily reflect your biological sex, which obviously they don't.
They are trying to go from one side to the other.
People still do that. That never changed.
I don't know why it is now not that or how we've gotten so far out of control.
People can still get treatment for gender dysphoria. I'm doing it myself. I'm literally on HRT. I've been on HRT for 1.5 years now. I'm literally doing that. That hasn't changed. I have dysphoria, but for the longest time, I was in denial and didn't categorize it that way because it wasn't as severe as what some other people on YouTube had described it as. For me, it was merely a mild uncomfortability. When I came out as trans, it wasn't people like this that were coming out and supporting me. It was the non-binary and the transfems and the gender fuck people, okay? As I like to call them. Those are my people. When I came out, those were the first people to accept me with open arms because they didn't care if I strictly adhered to some sort of archetype that already exists in society.
But it doesn't seem like we can untangle ourselves from that now. I mean, there are people that are claiming to be transsexuals, but honestly, the thing is look, we can sit here and divvy each other up and be like, well, these people are transgender, but these people are transsexual.
Well, yeah, the distinction is that transsexual denotes that you are medically transitioning in relation to your biological sex. To be transgender simply means not identifying with the gender you were assigned at birth. It's literally just an extension of the sex-gender distinction, which you would have to acknowledge as a trans person. Otherwise, your entire identity and existence and personhood is invalid.
These people are non-binary, and these people are just cross-dressers. But guess what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because we've all been looped into one thing, and there is no escaping those consequences.
What are the consequences? You know you can just draw subcategories. Do you think that trans people are a monolith and that they all must necessarily have exactly the same experience with dysphoria? Why is that obligatory?
Because there is this subset of people online that is apparently the trans community that is talking all this crap. You have people like Dylan Mulvaney and the Lily whatever the hell that is like doing weird demonstrations in public about surgery.
That was Lily Tino. I don't know what the fuck you're on about when it comes to Dylan Mulvaney. Wasn't her biggest controversy that her face ended up on a Bud Light beer can? Is Lily Tino kind of cringe? Yeah. She is cringe. I don't know what the fuck that has to do with your argument, though. Like, I hate to break it to you, but whether or not somebody is cringe does not determine the validity of their gender identity. Sometimes people just suck. And that includes some trans people. That doesn't mean we need to have a higher standard for trans people. It just means that sometimes people fucking suck.
And that's what people know trans people to be. And that's what they think you're pushing on their kids.
It's almost as if conservatives will find one example of a bad trans person and extrapolate it onto all other trans people. Who would have guessed? You mean to tell me that conservatives are dishonest? Holy shit.
And then that's the whole other conversation is like, look, I have the people that are supposed to be on my side that are sitting here telling me that I'm insane.
Yeah, you are insane. Why would I be on your side when you're not making logical arguments? Like, you're just having a mental breakdown.
And that I'm a trans medicalist because I believe in seeking the treatment of gender dysphoria.
No, that's actually not what a trans medicalist would be defined as. It's someone that believes that gender dysphoria is a necessary prerequisite for being trans. That is your belief. You said earlier in the video that you believe that having dysphoria is necessary to being transgender. You are objectively a trans medicalist. Now, whether or not you think that being a trans medicalist is a good or a bad thing, that's up to you. That's an entirely separate discussion. Like, if you're a trans medicalist, then you're a trans medicalist. Just fucking own it. Well, you don't have to obfuscate. Now, I might still disagree with you on the basis of your arguments lacking any real substance or proper analysis, but at least own what your position is.
And like, that's just crazy and unhinged. And then on the flip side, you have these freaking Republicans who are sitting there listening to a man who is telling them that their child is going to school and coming home with a new Bessie. Do you know how expensive those are?
How often is this happening? What are you talking about? As for whether or not Republican politicians are going to target us, it doesn't matter if the trans community is on its best behavior. Yes, because complacency and conformity is what notoriously gets us to win civil rights movements, even though the literal opposite is true. The reason that gay people are accepted is not because of the assimilationists that are like, all we wanted was civil unions, and now we're pushing the envelope and asking for things that didn't exist before, and, marriage was always between a man and a woman. Those people didn't do shit for gay rights. If anything, they actively harmed gay rights. It was the people that were more extreme in their beliefs, that were more willing to argue against things that are wrong, and willing to say, actually, no, we're not going to stop at civil unions. We want gay marriage. We want marriage equality.
Not just walking into schools and getting sex changes, okay? Like, that's crazy. I don't know
Yeah, that's not happening.
what's going on with, like, the hormones, and if they are, like, having care done on them, like,
So you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about is what you're saying. Why should I watch the rest of the video?
they're being supported, and then they're coming home and they have scripts for hormones or whatever. That sounds insane to me, but maybe it's happening. I don't know.
So if you don't know, then why the fuck are you talking about it? You just said that you don't know. You have stated multiple times throughout the video that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So why would you talk about the subject that you admit you know nothing about for 30 minutes?
You don't know what's real in the media and what isn't, especially when it comes to trans people. Like, everything that gets thrown out there is nonsense. It really is. It is a whole lot of nothingness so they can be getting clicks because this person pretended to be trans and this person says this about trans people and
She's literally just yapping. This is how you know she's a real woman, by the way.